like Emily, who's right here. She said that my UN stuff inspired her.
Bet on people with similar values as me, kind and good.
About representation, about inclusion.
It means inclusivity and representation, kind and good.
She said that my UN stuff inspired her.
About inclusion.
It means inclusivity.
CEOs, politicians and celebrities have to brand themselves in certain ways to gain people's trust and sympathy. There are good ways of branding yourself and there are bad ways. In this video, I'll look at the much less than great ways that Meghan and Alissa brand themselves, the similar way they talk about their ambitions, and what motivates them, allegedly. Their speech patterns and word choice point to larger underlying problems in today's celebrity culture and display almost everything people should avoid when it comes to self-branding. I'll draw on my educational background in linguistics and media studies. For years, I've taught college-level journalism and branding. Welcome to the channel. Before watching the first revealing clips, a few points about branding. In order for identification to happen, identification between the celebrity or public figure and the audience, there needs to be so-called intimacy at a distance, meaning that the celebrity or public figure imitates a real face-to-face interaction with each individual audience member, so that each individual audience member feels like they're friends or even family. Similarity, familiarity and liking need to take place on an audiovisual level, meaning that the celebrity's words and body language have to be relatable to people. This enhances the celebrity's so-called source attractiveness. A high source attractiveness leads to high source credibility. Simply put, people trust celebrities that they like on a personal level. How do Meghan and Alissa score on these parameters? Do they appear relatable and likable? When talking about their ambitions and what motivates them, Meghan and Alissa have two things in common. One, they appeal to and associate with the same demographic, making it sound like they care about them. And two, they reveal self-centered personality traits that go against the solidary thinking that they both make great efforts to emphasize. Let's watch a few clips from before they rose to fame and fortune in the media.
Have you found yourself applying that same rule when you're working with other women and helping other people through tough times?
Yeah, oh my gosh, totally. I mean, women and community, that's so important to me. And I think
right off the bat, we noticed that Alissa doesn't say how it's important to her. However, since the host made this presupposition, Alissa obviously feels like she has to play into it.
he gave me permission to sort of reestablish this community of women that I think we had all just shut off. Like we had hunkered down with our nuclear families and I wasn't with anyone, talking to anyone. And I realized it was all about connecting again with women and building community. It reminded me to never get too far away from communities of women, from vulnerability and honesty and kind of hardship. Like that's where I'm most comfortable.
This is a recurring talking point in pop culture at large. If you say certain words enough times, and if you appeal to the same demographic enough times, you can hope to join the popular group in society. Platitudes have become code language to join that club. The downsides to this are twofold. One, that people who think for themselves start noticing the forced, calculating nature of these cliches. Two, that people who think for themselves start noticing that all the pretty words about community, whatever that even means, Alissa doesn't tell us, actually disguise selfish or self-serving motives. Because looking at the campaign Alissa ended up doing, community with women obviously wasn't her goal at all. It's like a person who feels the need to say, I'm an honest person, or I love everyone. Why say that? Because the opposite is likely true, that they aren't honest, and that they don't love everyone. The same thing applies when a person says they want community, want to be inclusive, etc. People like that use language as a shield to stop us from looking behind the shield. Before hearing the buzzwords, let's focus on the second point I mentioned earlier, the selfish or self-serving motives.
And it was sort of just this small microcosm of like, pursue your energy. We have permission, as a sweet friend of mine says, like we have permission at this point in our lives to pursue what gives us energy and joy. give yourself that permission and things will happen and success will come from it. So I think,
aside from the fact that you can't pursue your energy as you need your energy to pursue whatever it is that you want to pursue, what Alissa says here exposes that she has the wrong mindset as far as business and branding are concerned. Alissa is focused on what she wants to give herself permission to do, and she claims that this self-focused motivation makes things happen. However, that doesn't follow at all. As an executive, you're obligated to sponsors and your target audience. You're the one coming up with new ideas, but these ideas have to have the core consumer in mind. With her actions, Alissa showed that she found pursuing her energy more important than the common good, and even more noteworthy, she failed to create community with the demographic she desperately tries to appeal to. Which is because community was never the point, representation was never the point. She merely uses these words as a shield so that hopefully people won't try to look behind it. Later on, Alissa effectively disavows the target audience to be in good standing with the buzzword club.
You know, I'm a businesswoman. I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. It's like we need to evolve and elevate. What does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. It means shifting the tone. It means having a campaign that's truly inclusive and feels lighter and brighter. And representation is at sort of the heart of evolution. Bud Light had been kind of a brand of fratty, kind of out of touch humor. And it was really important that we had another approach. So,
from a branding perspective, there are several problems with Alissa's statements here. First of all, she calls the type of humor that the loyal consumers identify themselves with fratty and out of touch. Alissa implies that she's above this humor, and thus that she's above the loyal consumer in terms of intelligence, which is ironic considering that she was actually the one with out of touch humor. Here, out of touch refers to humor that might be considered offensive or stereotyping or whatever other disingenuous term Alissa would use for it. So this is an appeal to the popular group she so desperately wants to be part of, that she'll set the record straight. She can't have it both ways though. She can't appeal to the target audience and please the buzzword club at the same time. She has to choose. And she did. And what a choice it was. Secondly, she says,
when I took over Bud Light.
While it's true she was made an executive, there's a problem with her point of view here. The way people phrase things matters. It matters if they say they work for Bud Light or if they say they've taken over Bud Light. Just like it matters if someone calls a TV show their show or simply say they were in a show.
I never thought my life would be that awesome. I never thought that I'd have a show that went for this long. That's crazy.
A new challenge. It's a new chapter, right? And also keep in mind, I've been working on my show for 7 years.
Thirdly, Alissa is intentionally confusing objective and subjective definitions. The annoying slogan, evolve and elevate, which she keeps repeating ad nauseam, doesn't necessarily mean inclusivity and representation. That's merely her subjective, self-serving and dishonest interpretation of it. There's no objective substance behind her words, as she doesn't define why evolve and elevate means these things, objectively speaking. This lack of proper definitions exposes a manipulative way of arguing. At this point, it's painfully obvious that Alissa is more concerned with her own personal ambitions, pursuing her energy, than what's good for the brand. She has no respect for the brand, and she willingly ignores the target audience. She displays superficial knowledge about the brand's history and heritage. All she knows is that she wants to change it, drastically, to please the group she wants to be part of. All of this dramatically impacts her source attractiveness and hence her source credibility. This preliminary conclusion is a bridge to understand Meghan's real ambitions and real motivations. Like Alissa, Meghan had a task, which she called a job, that she displayed a superficial understanding of. And like Alissa, she uses appeals to community and buzzwords as a shield, as a way to disguise the surface-level understanding and her own personal ambitions and self-centered motivations. Never mind if she uses these buzzwords in inappropriate contexts, as long as she uses them. That seems to be her rationale, in lack of a better term.
What does the work entail? What do you do?
Yeah, so last February, actually, I went to Rwanda, which was incredible because Rwanda has the highest percentage of female political participants of any other country in the world. So 64% of their government is female. And then take that information, use things like this, and use opportunities like I have on the TIG to talk about things of really high value.
With all the problems Rwanda has had, how do you explain this seemingly contradiction?
I think it's really, truly, and especially being there on the ground, it was so interesting to see that in the wake of obviously such a horrendous experience that they had. And in that, yes, so many of the men were lost in the genocide, so it gave women an opportunity to either succumb to that or to then find some strength and then mobilize in a way that was really empowering. And I think that's specifically what they've done, which is a great benchmark for what women all over the world could be doing.
Meghan's rising intonation replaces the conjunction but. However, the intonation serves the same function as said conjunction, downplaying this tragic incident in order to emphasize the buzzword empowered.
Yes, so many of the men were lost in the genocide, so it gave women an opportunity to...
From a branding perspective, this says something about her priorities, what's most important to her. And in that regard, her statements don't exactly add to her likability, and hence source attractiveness. Quite the contrary.
With all the problems Rwanda has had.
If Larry King hadn't presupposed the tragic incident in his question, Meghan wouldn't even have considered it, which is why her intonation reveals that she's reluctant to mention it.
Yes, so many of the men were lost.
And she usually doesn't mention it when she's asked about her work.
The highest percentage of female parliamentarians of any government in the world. Rwanda has the highest percentage of female parliamentarians of any government in the world. 64% of their government is female, which is astounding.
Because Rwanda has the highest percentage of female political participants of any other country in the world.
Meghan's micropauses and restarts indicate that she's trying to memorize her script. Also, she was asked about what her work entails, what she does specifically.
What does the work entail? What do you do?
It's very telling that she thinks mentioning that she's traveled to a country to meet people is a sufficient answer. Other times she describes a guided tour.
Seeing some of the briefings for what they're going to say to Ban Ki-moon, our UN Secretary General, and understanding how that piece of it works, or understanding different pillars of an organization where they'll say, okay, there's meetings about the environment, and then there's a meeting about health and wellness, and a meeting about safety and security, and then a meeting about women's issues. And you go, okay, but aren't women affected by all of those things? Right? Like you can see where...
This can hardly be called work. Thus, when Meghan claims that it's exhausting.
Like if I'm going to have my name attached to it, or I'm going to do it, I really get very hands-on, which is exhausting, but...
It's unreliable at best and deceptive at worst. With their desperate appeals to the same demographic, Meghan and Alissa show that they don't have the common good in mind. Meghan's so caught up in pretend ideology, which she thinks makes her look good, that she can't even relate the environmental and health-related issues she mentions to both men and women.
And you go, okay, but aren't women affected by all of those things?
Both of them have one demographic in mind, and they can't even reliably handle that. They're busy saying the right words for self-serving reasons. This diminishes or completely destroys their attractiveness in terms of branding. Buzzwords are so important to Meghan that she even makes the show she was in sound groundbreaking in its approach.
I love women who I am able to look up to and say, they have done so much in terms of leadership, but also promoting diversity, and what she's, like USA Network especially, I feel really proud of, really embraced changing the landscape of television in that way.
In reality, however, a lot of shows had the kind of diversity she's talking about. But who cares about reality when what you say sounds good? Also, like Alissa, Meghan doesn't assign meaning to the clichés she uses. In a speech that was supposed to be about the pointless, agenda-driven organization she was invited by, Meghan literally mentioned said organization as a sidebar.
So, to meet again here on UK soil with him by my side makes it all feel full circle. And just as a sidebar, earlier this afternoon we sat down with a few of you delegates. And it was incredibly inspiring, the resounding themes that came up about representation, about inclusion, about access.
The rest of her speech was about her favorite subject, no matter how misplaced it was.
And I was invited to pull up a seat at the table and prove that I belonged. My life had changed rather significantly. I was now married, and I was now a mom.
Meghan behaves in almost the exact same way as Alissa. Both of them have high and low self-awareness at the same time. What do you mean by that? I'm glad you asked. They both have high self-awareness in terms of making sure to say the right things, the right kind of pop culture code language. However, they both have low self-awareness in terms of watching themselves from the outside. If this were a computer game, they'd constantly be playing in 3D, not 2D, because they don't see how they come across.
You know, unlike what you see in the movies, there's no class on how to speak, how to cross your legs. But even down to like the national anthem. That's me late at night Googling, what's the national, I've got to learn this.
By all metrics, these complaints expose a spoiled mindset. A person who's trying to sell these mild challenges as actual hardship is a person who's difficult or impossible for people to trust. Meghan and Alissa think that words alone shape reality, that words alone shape people's perception of them, when the truth is the exact opposite. Actions shape people's perception of someone. However, people who act and don't want to be interviewed about their good intentions rarely get the exposure that surface-level people like Meghan and Alissa get.
It's also been a great way for me to connect with people, like Emily, who's right here. I only know her through Twitter, and I knew she was coming because I saw it on social media.
Stop it, really?
Yes, and she's going on a trip soon to Costa Rica to do some aid work because she said that my UN stuff inspired her. I wrote you a letter. I brought it.
Okay, that is amazing.
It's so good to finally meet you. It's so great to meet you.
This could have easily taken place after the interview. For Meghan, however, it's important that it takes place while the cameras are rolling, so that she can come across as relatable to ordinary people. Look how nice she is, stopping the interview to meet a fan. Before we all get too emotional due to the authenticity of it all, let's see how Alissa praises herself, with a little help from the host.
Now you have this incredible job with Bud Light. What does that mean to you? And when you think about your own impact and your own legacy, what do you want that to be, especially when you think about at work, but also outside of work? So, you know, so many women who are interacting with you and watching your career, and you're raising a daughter.
The host makes sure to touch on a lot of potential talking points for Alissa. It's almost as if she's fishing for a certain answer. You know, the kind of answer we've all heard 1,000,002 times before. However, fortunately for us all, Alissa didn't actually need this help because she's so good at answering on her own.
It's taken kind of 41 years for a woman to be in this spot. And
unsurprisingly, Alissa follows suit, no pun intended, and uses grandiose language to underline the milestone she's reached, as if she's the desired outcome after years of struggle. It doesn't get any more navel-gazing than that. Or maybe it does.
I try to build teams of people, bet on people with similar values as me, who are hungry and want to do great things, but care about each other and protect each other and are kind and good.
Mm-hmm. She just finished saying that she promotes inclusivity, and here she says that she looks for people with the same values as her. When people talk long enough, they always tell on themselves. Alissa's using these teams of people to praise herself. Implicitly then, she's doing great things and she's kind and good. What a team effort. Meghan resorts to the same kind of impression management. If she's ever doubting that the audience gets her greatness, which should be obvious to everyone from her point of view, she doesn't mind telling them exactly what to think about her many achievements.
It was at that moment that I realized the magnitude of my actions. At the age of 11,
I had created my small level of impact.
The way people speak exposes their thought patterns. These thought patterns are the results of personality structure and societal influence. Thus, Meghan and Alissa's similar views and similar ways of expressing their views tell us something about a much larger problem in today's society. Firstly, it tells us that many of the people in charge are unfit for the job. And secondly, it tells us that society values almost all of the wrong things. They value whatever sounds good, not what's true. They value whatever looks good, not what's right or moral. They value virtue signaling, not substance. The first step in changing this is to be aware of it and be aware of all the manipulation tactics. That's why I find a video like this relevant to make. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.